Before dying, this man left a clue for the president. It was a torn piece of cloth with a line written in Latin, "To move one's feet." The fabric was scorched, burned by some mysterious energy. From the footprints at the scene, the person who fought Bamboo Tubehead wasn't Gyro Zeppeli, but Johnny Joestar, a young man who couldn't walk. At last, the president's attention turned to this paralyzed young man. That cloth had once wrapped around a part of the saint's corpse. The burn marks were caused by its holy energy, and the patterns of the corpse had been seared into the fabric. Judging by its size and the position of the letters, the president deduced that the piece belonged to the left or right arm. And those Latin words, they pointed to the next location of the corpse, because those markings were identical to the ones already carved into his own body. The president opened his shirt, revealing his chest, covered in the same Latin inscriptions. The saint's heart was already inside him. According to the map left by Joseph of Arimathea, the saint's corpse had been divided into 9 parts. And since Johnny had just defeated the assassin, he was likely to keep pursuing the remaining pieces. So the president decided to go along with it, to let Johnny continue the hunt in stage 3. Once Johnny located the next piece of the saint's corpse, the assassin following him would strike again and seize both pieces at once. Everything was perfectly set until a sound came from outside the door. It was Stephen Steele's wife. She had overheard every single word. Gyro never expected it, that in the race for victory, the biggest twist would be a gift from the heavens. Just after finishing the second stage, Gyro was already frowning. He only had 36 points, ranking 6th overall. The first place, Diego Brando, already had 150 points. Even if Gyro won the next stage, his total still wouldn't catch up to Dio's score. If only Dio got a 0 or dropped out in the third stage. But that kind of miracle never happens. Then Johnny suddenly shouted for Gyro to come take a look. Gyro pulled out his binoculars, and what he saw made him freeze.
What the hell? It was Dio!
Diego Brando had fallen off his horse and was lying there unconscious. Just as they said, speak of the devil. Seeing him covered in blood, Gyro was about to go check on him. But Johnny, knowing Dio's true nature, stopped him at once.
Dio might be a famous jockey, but he's also the kind of man who'd do anything for money and victory. His scandals pile higher than mountains. At age 20, he married an 83-year-old rich widow for her money, and 6 months later, she was dead. Dio inherited everything. Rumor had it he killed her, but no one ever proved it.
Johnny brought it up to warn Gyro. Dio could be faking it. It might be a trap, but Gyro thought otherwise.
With Dio's current lead, there was no reason for him to fake an injury.
So Gyro ran toward him. The ground here was full of sharp rock. Dio's horse must have been startled and thrown him off. Gyro approached and asked if he needed a rescue team. Hearing that, Dio struggled to his feet and said,
"Mind your own business. Get going. No matter how far ahead you ride, I'll surpass both of you in the end."
Then Dio staggered forward, collapsed among a pile of dinosaur fossils, and passed out cold. Johnny was startled. Dio's arms seemed to be growing scales, and his nails had turned long and sharp. Was this from the fall, or was something else happening to him? The race wouldn't wait. Gyro and Johnny leapt onto their horses again and continued their journey forward. Dio, the racer in first place, had actually fallen off his horse? What on earth happened to him? The third stage had been running for 5 days now. Johnny and Gyro had already covered 380 kilometers. In just 2 more days, they would cross the Rocky Mountains and reach the finish line of the third stage. And the mountain that matched the mark on Johnny's arm, Mount Footloose, was already in sight. Just another 15 kilometers, and they would reach the place, the location of the saint's corpse. As night began to fall, the two were exhausted. After a short discussion, they decided to rest for the night and head out again at dawn. But just as they were making that decision, their horses suddenly trembled, clearly afraid of something. They turned around and saw Dio. Diego Brando had caught up. Johnny and Gyro were about to pick up speed, but Dio called out, Hey, today's race is over. It's getting dark already. Don't bother running anymore. There's a village up ahead. You two should stay there for the night. It's dangerous to camp out here. Wild beasts roam these parts." Johnny and Gyro exchanged a confused glance. What was Dio trying to say? Before they could answer, he started babbling a bunch of awkward jokes. He looked full of energy now, his injuries completely healed. When they still didn't respond, Dio started talking about Johnny. Both were rising stars in the horse racing world and had heard of each other long ago. Johnny, despite being paralyzed from the waist down, had managed to return to racing and even win. That had shocked Dio deeply. But then Johnny noticed something strange. The skin on Dio's wrist and neck, it looked like scales were forming. Not only that, it seemed like something was moving beneath his clothes. Before Johnny could take a closer look, Dio suddenly did a handstand on his saddle, then started spinning and tumbling like a gymnast. While doing so, he shouted, "Since you guys are good riders too, can you do this?" Gyro stared, dumbfounded. "Are all you horse horse racing people this insane? Johnny muttered, how should I know? He was seriously injured before, and now he's acting like he's high or something. Something's definitely not right. By the time the sun had fully set, they had no choice but to spend the night in the same village as Dio. But just as they were preparing to settle down, Dio suddenly disappeared. Having been in the racing world for years, Johnny knew Dio's dirty reputation all too well. If it meant victory, there was nothing he wouldn't do. Poisoning horses, tampering with saddles, anything. To be safe, Johnny and Gyro decided to take turns keeping watch, just like when they camped outdoors. There was a kitchen next door. Before settling down for the night, they went to grab some food. The moment Johnny stepped inside, he saw Dio was crouched outside the kitchen, stuffing handfuls of stones into his mouth. Dio's gone mad. He's eating rocks. Johnny had just brewed a pot of coffee when a familiar figure caught his eye. It was Dio. That guy was crouched outside, doing something strange. Johnny looked closer and saw Dio clutching a handful of rocks, and he was eating them. Then, suddenly, Dio's neck twisted a full 180 degrees.
これはコーヒーだ。コーヒーの香りがする。
Drawn by the aroma, Dio walked into the cabin. Johnny frowned. Dio, what the hell were you doing out there? Dio, completely serious, said, hey, don't tell me you don't know. It's called a gastrolith. Carnivores use it to grind up their food. It's good for your health, obviously.
コーヒーを入れてるのか？すごくいい香りだ。
Johnny was speechless. After thinking for a moment, he asked, why aren't you taking off your gloves? Dio struck a strange pose, then said calmly, it's freezing here. I can't stand it without gloves. Anyway, can I have a cup of that coffee you just made? Johnny, clearly annoyed, replied, we don't want to travel with you anymore. The coffee's right there. Drink it and then get lost. Dio sniffed the air. His eyes blank like a blind man's, fumbling around with his hands. Which cup's mine? He asked. Johnny snapped, there's only one cup in front of you. The rest are just cans. Can't you see? You said I can't see? In a flash, Dio's hand shot out, snatching a fly out of midair with ease. See that, cripple? My eyesight and strength are both sharper than ever. Then he went right back to sniffing the air. Johnny couldn't take it anymore. He picked up the cup himself and handed it to Dio. But the moment he lifted it, Dio suddenly dashed past him, snatching the cup away. Johnny froze. What the hell is wrong with this guy? Before he could even process it, he was stunned by what he saw next. Dio's mouth split open. The coffee he drank spilled out from the cracks in his face. This man stuffed a handful of rocks into his mouth, and suddenly, his neck twisted a full 180 degrees. The corners of his mouth split all the way up to his ears. Johnny, watching all this, was nearly scared out of his mind. Just then, Gyro entered the room. The kitchen was swarming with flies, way too many. Gyro turned around to shut the window, but the moment he looked outside, he understood why. In the yard lay the corpse of a brown bear. Half its flesh had been eaten away. No human could have done that. At that moment, a noise came from inside the house. Johnny turned around. What the hell? A dinosaur? Could it be Dio transformed into one? Gyro was still trying to figure out what was up with that bear corpse when he heard the noise and looked back, only to get smacked by a dinosaur's tail, knocked clean off the cliff, and left hanging from a tree on the mountainside. What the hell? Gyro got one-shotted? The moment Johnny froze, the enemy lunged and slammed him down on the stove. Its massive jaws opened wide, and Johnny fired his stand, tusk. Several nails shot out at once, tearing holes straight through the dinosaur's face. Johnny rolled off the stove amid the chaos. Could Dio be one of the assassins too? He fired another volley of nail bullets, but even at this close distance, the enemy dodged every single one. Just as the claws were about to rip into Johnny's throat, a steel ball flew toward the dinosaur's head. It dodged easily. The ball embedded itself into the wall, but the spin didn't stop. A moment later, the ball rebounded straight back, and the dinosaur dodged again. What? Even that missed? Gyro froze for just an instant, and in that instant, the dinosaur's claws seized him, pinning him completely, unable to move. That speed, that reflex, that dynamic vision, this thing's stats were insane. Could Dio's goal also be the saint's corpse? Then Gyro realized the dinosaur only reacted to fast-moving objects. If something approached slowly, so slow it didn't feel threatening, it wouldn't react at all. As he spoke, a can slowly rolled toward Dio's feet. Then, with a loud bang, Gyro's steel ball shot out from inside it, finally landing a hit. The dinosaur was knocked back, and Gyro and Johnny used the chance to escape the house, slamming the door behind them. But just then, Gyro noticed something strange. The markings on Johnny's hand looked familiar. Wait, weren't those the Big Dipper? If you ever face an opponent who outmatches you in both strength and speed, how do you fight back? This girl had the perfect answer. Dinosaur Dio finally took a hit from Gyro's steel ball, but moments later, he regrouped and charged right back. Johnny and Gyro were on the verge of losing it. Every enemy they met was crazier than the last. It was too late to run now. All they could do was block the door with all their strength to buy some time. As Johnny held the door shut, Gyro noticed something. The Latin letters on Johnny's hand lined up perfectly with the constellation of the Big Dipper, but the wooden door was about to shatter under Dio's impact, and survival came first. Now wasn't the time to figure out what it meant. Remembering what happened back at the cafe,
すごくいい香りだ.
Johnny realized this guy couldn't see things that stayed still. As the dinosaur burst through the door, the two dove onto the corpse of a brown bear. If they wanted to survive, they couldn't move a muscle, not even blink. Sure enough, the dinosaur instantly lost sight of them and began wandering aimlessly. After circling around twice, it started heading toward the cliff. Did it work? Not quite. Even if it couldn't see, its sense of smell was still sharp. After sniffing the air for a while, the dinosaur turned back, heading straight toward them. It got closer and closer. Both men held their breath, frozen in place. The dinosaur sniffed them again, then suddenly raised its tail and whipped down. By chance, it struck between them. Still unable to locate its targets, the dinosaur stomped back into the cabin. What was it doing in there? The next second, they understood. Dio had thrown out Gyro's steel ball, the very one that had hit him earlier. The spinning ball would always return to Gyro's hand. He was trying to use it to trace Gyro's position. This was bad. The steel ball rolled straight toward Gyro, and the dinosaur charged along with it. The moment the ball touched Gyro, his thigh suddenly caved in, letting the ball roll toward the wall. The dinosaur chased it blindly and smashed headfirst right into the wall. After a few failed searches, it finally gave up and ran off the cliff. Turns out, Gyro had used the rotational energy of the steel ball to make his thigh sink inward, throwing off the dinosaur's sense of direction. Johnny and Gyro had narrowly escaped death, but then Johnny felt something wrong beneath him. The bear's once soft fur had turned into a hard, scaly hide, and it was moving. It had turned into a dinosaur too? In Part 1, Dio could only turn people into vampires, but in Part 7's parallel world, he could turn dead animals into dinosaurs. Exploiting the dinosaur's poor static vision, Johnny and Gyro managed to fool their enemy, but then the brown bear corpse beneath them suddenly turned into a dinosaur, and this time it was a T-Rex. Bigger, stronger, and far more terrifying than the dinosaur Dio himself turned into. Realizing the danger, Gyro used the spin of his steel ball to fling Johnny straight into the sewer. At the same time, he made a shocking discovery. The mark on Johnny's arm was neither a Latin word nor the shape of a mountain. It was a constellation. The first part represented the Big Dipper, and the second stood for the North Star. When the Big Dipper sank below the horizon, the North Star aligned perfectly with Mount Footloose, and the hill the Dipper pointed to was their true destination, the next part of the saint's corpse. As the T-Rex roared back to life, Dio spotted their trail and came charging after them. With the enemy closing in, Gyro dove into the sewer too. If they could just escape this place and climb that hill, the saint's corpse would be within their grasp. But just as the exit came into view, a pack of small carnivorous dinosaurs appeared from behind. Johnny turned and fired a volley of spin nails, but every shot missed. These little dinosaurs had insane reflexes and dynamic vision. In a blink, they had closed in on the two. While biting and clawing, they even sprayed urine all over them, marking them with scent. And because of that smell, even more dinosaurs came rushing from behind. A swarm of dinosaurs lunged out from the shadows. Gyro threw his steel ball, and in the instant he killed them, they turned into rats. It turned out those dinosaurs had been turned from rats. After dealing with the danger, the two finally crawled out of the sewer, but waiting for them at the exit were even more dinosaurs. Bigger, stronger, and wearing human clothes. Diego had turned all the villagers into monsters. And it didn't stop there. Johnny and Gyro's bodies were changing too. The spots where Diego had scratched them were now covered in scales. Gyro's arm had completely transformed into a dinosaur limb, and the corners of his mouth were starting to split open. At this rate, they'd both turn into dinosaurs in less than 3 minutes. As the dinosaur horde closed in, Gyro suddenly asked Johnny, "So what now? You gonna throw away the saint's corpse and beg Dio for mercy, or defeat him in the next 3 minutes and end his power for good?" The little dinosaurs that had turned from rats came swarming again. Back in the sewer, they had already marked them with urine. Diego was using them to track their scent. Panic filled Johnny's eyes. They had to act fast and take Dio down. But Gyro said, "No, we have something more important to do. In these last 3 minutes, what we must do is climb that mountain and get the saint's corpse." Then Gyro grabbed Johnny's arm. The left hand that had already grown scales had returned to normal. Johnny's infection slowed down too, while Gyro's kept spreading. It had to be the saint's corpse inside Johnny, holding back Diego's stand ability. If they could reach the saint's corpse on the mountain, Gyro's infection could be stopped. And only then could they fight back. But the small dinosaurs had already climbed onto their bodies. Diego and his monsters were rushing toward them. Danger was closing in fast. Gyro shouted,
Go! Johnny, go!
and with that, he pulled Johnny along and leapt off the cliff. 3 minutes later, Gyro would completely turn into a dinosaur, becoming Dio's slave. Only by obtaining the next part of the saint's corpse could they have even a sliver of hope. So, Johnny and Gyro leapt off the mountain without hesitation. The dinosaurs chasing them jumped after them as well. The corpse was on the mountain across the canyon, but the gap was so wide, no one could possibly make that jump. Johnny screamed in panic, "You're dragging me off a cliff to die, you bastard!" Gyro pulled out his steel ball, aimed at a tree on the cliffside, and threw it. Under the power of the spin, the tree split open and transformed into vertical vines. Using them, the two swung across the canyon and landed safely on the other side. But the moment they touched the ground, the mountaintop beneath them turned into soft quicksand. The entire surface started to writhe. Gyro's guess was right all along. This was the Devil's Palm, the location of the saint's corpse. Now that the ground was shifting, it must have been reacting to Johnny, because he carried another part of the saint's corpse. Behind them, the dinosaurs leapt off the cliff, trying to climb up the opposite mountain to chase them. Even if they climbed fast, it would still take several minutes to reach the top. But Gyro didn't have that long. His face was already completely deformed, his consciousness fading. He could turn into a dinosaur at any moment. Just then, Johnny noticed a strange sculpture nearby. Looking closer, he realized its inside was hollow. That wasn't a sculpture at all. It was a stand. The manifestation of the energy here, covered by sand, it had taken on a visible form, and in its hands was exactly what they'd been searching for. 2 eyeballs, the saint's eyes. Meanwhile, Diego had climbed up from below. He kicked the dinosaur next to him flying, using that force to jump onto the cliff wall, and in one leap, he reached the corpse. Before Johnny could react, Diego had already taken the saint's corpse of the 3rd stage. The saint's corpse that Johnny finally got his hands on was snatched away by Diego. After Diego obtained the corpse, the stand that came with the relic suddenly reawakened. It leaned close to Diego's ear, whispering something. When it finished, a beam of light flashed and carved a line of text onto Diego's arm. At the same time, the mark on Johnny's left hand began to fade. That pattern was no longer useful. The stand, awakened by the eyes, had already revealed to Diego where the next part of the corpse was buried. Seeing the saint's corpse snatched away, Johnny fired several of his nail bullets at Diego. Caught completely off guard, Diego's arm was pierced through on the spot. Johnny immediately launched a second volley, but to his shock, Gyro's steel ball intercepted them, deflecting the nails midair. By now, Gyro had grown a long tail and his eyes had turned completely reptilian. He'd lost all sense of self and become one of Diego's subordinates. In such a desperate situation, what could Johnny do? Before he could think of a plan, a woman's voice called out from the cliffside. She shouted his name, asking if he had thrown his nails. Then, a woman in red rode toward them on a dinosaur. Seeing Johnny stay silent, she asked again. Johnny frowned in confusion. "Who the hell are you?" Glancing at Diego beside him, the woman smirked. "Well done. Turning you into a dinosaur and making you the squad leader. Seems I made the right call." With that, she took the saint's eyes from Diego's hand. It turns out she was the one pulling the strings behind it all. After using Diego to grab the saint's corpse, the real enemy finally revealed themselves. Her name was Dr. Ferdinand, a geologist and paleontologist. This ability to turn others into dinosaurs, she said, was a power she obtained 2 years ago at the Devil's Palm. Its name, Scary Monsters. Diego was nothing more than her pawn. She was one of the assassins sent to seize the corpse, and today she would take Johnny's left arm as well. Ferdinand then examined the eyes in her hand. Their freshness shocked her. She couldn't believe. These perfectly preserved eyes belonged to a body that had died 1,900 years ago. Johnny's eyes widened. Wait, 1,900 years ago? But the American continent hadn't even been discovered yet. The woman gave him a disdainful look. "You're collecting the corpse, yet you don't even know whose it is." Johnny spat. Then, glaring up at her, he asked, "Who the hell are you people? You call yourself a geologist? But I knew it. You're working with the government, aren't you?" But rather than answering, the woman frowned at the sight of his spit. "Hey, did you just spit? First you scatter nails everywhere, and now you're spitting? You've polluted this land enough. Hand over that left arm, or I'll tear you apart right now." Just as the words left her mouth, she suddenly noticed Johnny had already thrown his left arm to the ground, and Johnny himself had transformed into a half-human, half-dinosaur creature. Johnny actually threw away the saint's corpse. He chose to transform into a dinosaur. Why would he do that? Turns out, he wanted to use his dinosaur form to snatch back the saint's eyes in one go. Before the transformation was complete, his body had already gained incredible speed and strength. But his mind hadn't been fully consumed yet. This was his one and only chance to fight back. The enemy was completely off guard. With a single swing of his tail, Johnny knocked the saint's eyes to the ground. But before he could make another move, a swarm of dinosaurs pinned him to the ground. The two saint's eyes rolled to the side. Dr. Ferdinand stepped forward, mocking Johnny. "With such a petty trick, you really thought you could turn this around?" Then he ordered Diego to finish him off. Before Diego could move, Gyro's steel ball suddenly came flying in. The doctor roared in fury, ordering Gyro to stay out of it. But Gyro just crouched where he was, motionless. Johnny, lying on the ground, finally saw it clearly. The dinosaurization on Gyro's body was already fading away. And of the two saints' eyes that had fallen to the ground, one was missing. Seeing Gyro not responding, the doctor repeated his command. Gyro gave a faint smile, revealing his golden teeth, and slowly lifted his head toward them. He had already taken the saint's corpse. One of the saint's eyes was now embedded in his face. Gyro actually got hold of the saint's corpse. And now, one of the saint's eyes is embedded in his face. Under everyone's gaze, Gyro suddenly let out a painful scream. The eye on his face started to move, drilling itself into his eye socket. The doctor was stunned. "What? What did you do to him?" But Johnny said, "I didn't do anything." The eye rolled toward Gyro on its own. When Gyro opened his eyes again, the relic had completely fused with his right eye. A golden cross had appeared on his face. At the same time, the steel ball Diego was holding began to spin again, and in its center, an eye had grown. The ball moved like it was alive, sliding up Diego's arm. With just a glance from Gyro, the steel ball suddenly shot upward, smashing straight into the doctor's face. Then, Gyro noticed something strange. In his right eye's vision, the blood splattering from Ferdinand's face was so close, as if it were just an inch before his eyes. He could even see the doctor's teeth shattering. That's when Gyro realized the spin of the steel ball was no longer just a technique. He had gained a power beyond human limits. The eye growing on the steel ball was now connected to his own. They could share the same vision. Under Johnny's desperate charge, Gyro finally seized one of the saint's eyes and unlocked a new ability. The steel ball he'd thrown at the doctor had already bounced high into the sky. To avoid getting hit, Dr. Ferdinand summoned every dinosaur around him, forming a living shield. That steel ball, now bearing an eye, was linked directly to Gyro's own. Through the ball's elevated vantage point, Gyro could see everything as if through a camera. With that overhead view, he instantly spotted the doctor's weak point. Gyro hurled his second steel ball with all his strength. Oh, yeah! The two balls collided in midair. The one that had bounced away suddenly curved its path, slipping perfectly through a narrow gap and striking Ferdinand square on the foot. Johnny had already retrieved the corpse. The dinosaurification in his left arm had faded. Gyro called back the steel ball and prepared for the final strike. But when the dinosaurs dispersed, the doctor who'd been hiding in the center was gone. Had he turned into a dinosaur as well? Right then, the entire pack charged again. Ferdinand's voice echoed from within the herd. "This is the first time I've ever been hurt this badly. So today, you're both going to die." Johnny panicked. "Crap! What now? The doctor must have turned into a dinosaur." But Gyro stayed calm. No way. He can't transform. If his real body could change, he would have done it at the very start. The dinosaurs closed in. Gyro slammed a steel ball into the ground. It spun at high speed, sending ripples across the sand. Through the saint's eye, capable of seeing through all things, every vibration painted a perfect 360-degree map around him. He could even spot bugs crawling under rocks. The dinosaur's bones glowed clearly in his vision, and Dr. Ferdinand was hiding inside one of them, the dinosaurs. No? Still trying to hide? It's that one, Johnny. Shoot him. Johnny obeyed immediately, shooting his spinning nails point blank at Ferdinand's face. Ferdinand got hit in the face and popped straight out of the dinosaur's mouth. The instant he showed his face, Gyro's spinning steel ball hit Ferdinand square in the face. The battle was over. Gyro used the saint's corpse and finally brought the enemy down. The enemy was beaten until blood streamed down his face. His pretty features were completely ruined. "It's not over yet. I can still fight," Dr. Ferdinand shouted, and he ordered the dinosaurs to keep attacking. But when he turned around, the people behind him had all collapsed. His injuries were too severe, strength failed, and scary monsters stopped responding. As the true form appeared, everyone saw the dinosaurs weren't only villagers, 2 cougars were among them. The moment the cougars saw him covered in blood, they jumped on him, tore into him, and dragged him straight down the mountain. Gyro recalled his steel ball. Johnny searched the ground and asked, "Did you pick up the other left eye?" But Gyro had been fighting non-stop. He never had the chance. Then both of them saw Diego in the distance. The saint's left eye was in his hand. He took advantage of the chaos and snatched the corpse part, and his dinosaur form still hadn't fully disappeared. A big tail was still behind him. Relying on the saint's corpse, he retained someone else's stand ability. It was already too late to chase him. With insane speed and jumping power, Dio crossed the mountains like flat ground and vanished into the darkness. Based on what they'd seen, Diego Brando wasn't a killer sent by the higher-ups. He had just been controlled by Dr. Ferdinand, but now he knew about the corpse and had gained power from it. From now on, he'll definitely join the fight for the saint's corpse. Suddenly, a golden flash shot from Gyro's right eye. Light engraved the word turbo onto his palm. This must be a clue for the next saint's corpse part. If they figure it out, they could locate the saint's corpse in the 4th stage. The saint's 2 eyes were taken separately by Gyro and Diego. After merging with the right eye of the corpse, Gyro also received a clue to the next part. Turbo, Latin for whirlwind. Was it another star chart? What was it supposed to mean? More than the clue itself, Johnny was bothered by something else. During the fight, Dr. Ferdinand had said that the corpse belonged to a saint from 1,900 years ago. Which historical figure could have appeared in the Americas 1,900 years ago? Gyro said, "You must have heard wrong." He probably said 190 years. There's no damn history in the Americas from 1,900 years ago. But Johnny insisted he didn't mishear. It seemed those people actually knew the true identity of the corpse. So then, were there any famous figures from 1,900 years ago? Could he really have set foot on the American continent? Gyro froze. 1,900 years ago. Don't tell me it's that saint? As they spoke, their horses came running out from behind the mountain. They had indeed followed their master's trail. Diego was still somewhere nearby. Johnny and Gyro decided to depart immediately. Collecting the corpse was secondary. Winning the race was their real objective. After all the hardships, Johnny and Gyro finally set out again, determined to take 1st and 2nd place in the 3rd stage. The next day, Johnny and Gyro, along with many riders who had caught up from behind, charged out of the Rocky Mountains. Only 5 kilometers remained before the finish line. As long as they went around the lake ahead and rushed into Cannon City, victory for Stage 3 was within reach. Johnny, Gyro, Diego, and Sandman were all regulars of the leading group. In addition, there were Poca Loco and the others. To claim the 100 points and the 1-hour time bonus, Gyro had to defeat them all in these final 5 kilometers. At this point, Diego and Sandman were only 10 points apart, holding 1st and 2nd place. Gyro was in 6th, more than 100 points behind Diego. If Diego could just beat Sandman, he could secure 1st place. But he didn't care about Sandman at all. His eyes were fixed entirely on Gyro. After obtaining the saint's corpse, Diego's left eye had already turned golden, and the word Dio had appeared on his cheek. They charged down the slope. Cannon City was already in sight. Who would take the championship for Stage 3? The 3rd stage of the Steel Ball Run was nearing its end. After trekking for 510 kilometers, the riders with similar strength unexpectedly regrouped before the finish line. With only 5 kilometers left to Cannon City, a true speed showdown was about to begin. As the only runner in the race, Sandman overtook the riders and charged at the very front of the group. Seeing Diego chasing after him relentlessly, Gyro grew worried. That brat just awakened a stand? He wouldn't attack us before the finish line, would he? After hearing this, Johnny made a firm judgment. Diego would never launch an attack now. There are hot air balloons everywhere above us. The judges can see everything happening on the course. He has a massive lead right now. There's no way he'd take that risk. At this moment, Diego's state was relying on the dinosaur ability he still retained. He sensed every move of his opponents with amplified precision. No one knew what strange move he might pull next. In a blink, everyone reached the lakeside. 2 routes lay ahead. The right side was flat and easy, 2,300 meters long. The left was 700 meters shorter, but rugged, winding along a mountain trail. What will Johnny and Gyro do? Imagine this. In the final sprint, you suddenly face two paths. One is safe but farther. The other is shorter but dangerously risky. Which one would you choose? Gyro's choice completely shattered everyone's expectations. Facing this choice, Johnny shouted, "Let's go with the safe route on the right. The finish line is close. We can't take that risk now. We need our horses to rest as much as possible so we can unleash full speed on the final straight." As he spoke, Sandman and Pocoloco, who were ahead, had already climbed up the cliff on the left. The others turned right onto the main road. Gyro checked the map and then said, "You're right, the horse needs to rest before the sprint. And according to the map, the deepest part of this lake is only 2 meters. Let's go." And then he rode straight into the lake. Johnny was stunned. "Are you insane?" At that moment, Diego, who had caught up from behind, also charged into the water on horseback. The two of them had created a third route. They wanted to charge toward the finish line through the lake. If they crossed the lake directly, the distance was only 450 meters, several times shorter than the other's path. Johnny entered the water as well, but after taking just 2 steps, he realized something was wrong. We said we needed to let the horses rest. The resistance in the water is huge. Running in water is like carrying hundreds of extra pounds. The muscles will tire early, and if there's mud at the bottom, the hooves might get stuck. The horse could even drown. But Gyro said that as long as the horse slowed down and floated gently to the opposite side, they would still be faster than those running around the lake. That's definitely what Dio's thinking too. After hearing that, Johnny replied to Gyro, "You're not winning this battle. You're not beating Dio." Johnny Joestar was absolutely the biggest burden in the entire JoJo series. In the previous stage, Gyro lost the victory right at the finish line, all because Johnny kept harassing him. Now, in the final stretch of the third stage, Johnny started messing with Gyro's mindset again. Seeing that Gyro was determined to ride across the river, Johnny said to him, "Gyro, you can't win. You're not going to outrun Diego in this stage. Just go back to the shore with me." "What the fuck did you just say? I can't win?" Johnny answered, "Yeah, I could tell at a glance. You've already lost. In the first and second stages, you should have won based on skill and strategy alone. You should have been the champion, but you still lost." Gyro grew impatient. "What are you trying to say?" Johnny continued, "The reason you lost before wasn't those troubles you ran into on the way. Your ability and your reason for entering the race, you inherited all of that. And that boy who got sentenced to death, he became the factor that cornered you. You're just an inheritor. But everything Diego has, he seized with his own hands. His fate is something he controls himself. He's someone who hungers. I'm not saying he's good or bad. I'm saying that this difference, in essence, that's what will take victory away from you in this stage." Gyro was getting angry. "What do you mean? Are you saying I'm just some spoiled rich kid living off my family?" But Johnny said, "That's not what I mean. I'm saying if you don't show your hunger, there's no way you can win." After saying that, Johnny turned his horse around and ran toward the riverbank. He chose the road on the right, the safest option. Johnny said all this not to flatter Diego. Getting second or third in this stage didn't matter. This race is still long. What matters is growing in every single stage. If your spirit keeps growing, then the final victory. It'll definitely belong to someone like Gyro, a true inheritor. The final stretch of the third stage began. Gyro was thrown off again by Johnny's words, and even his horse's rhythm fell apart. Right now, only he and Diego chose to cross through the water. They kept their speed low while moving through the water. If they tried running in the water, the horse's stamina would drain instantly. They had to stay calm and take it slow across the lake. With his sharp senses, Diego knew Gyro and his horse's heartbeat and breathing perfectly. He even calculated when the horse would toss its head and which hoof would hit the shore first. 300 meters before the finish, there was a fallen branch. Gyro's horse would step on it, and that moment would push its speed to the limit. Its pulse would spike to 263. That would be the point where the horse started losing strength and slowing down. As long as Diego stayed ahead, before Gyro's horse stepped on that branch, the victory would be his. Right now, Diego had already stepped back onto land, and the 3 racers who took the long route on the right had also reached the far shore. Gyro was getting really anxious, but he had to hold it together. Right then, Pocoloco burst out from the mountain path on the left. Gyro leaned close to his horse and whispered, "Don't rush. This lake is your vacation spot. Relax. Don't get reckless." Then, Johnny had caught up from behind, and Gyro finally made it out of the water. His horse was getting harder to control. With 500 meters left to the finish, it was time to sprint. Gyro pushed forward. One burst of speed brought him right up behind Diego, but it still wasn't enough. Gyro started tossing his gear behind him as he ran. His luggage, his saddle, his stirrups all thrown away. Then he even stripped off his soaked clothes. With all that weight gone, his horse sped up again. In an instant, he was just one step behind Diego, just a little faster, and he would pass him. Meanwhile, Diego silently counted Gyro's horse's strides. Just as he expected, second, Gyro's horse stepped on that branch. Its speed dropped immediately. It gasped for air, and the gap between them widened again. Not only that, Pocoloco took this chance to pass Gyro, and the others behind closed in as well. Would the third stage title really slip from Gyro's hands? Gyro actually started stripping on the spot, just to win the race, all to remove the extra weight and make his horse run faster. Sure enough, his horse burst out with unbelievable speed. But so what? Everything still went exactly as Diego had predicted. With 300 meters left, Gyro's horse had already reached its physical limit. But how could he possibly let the title slip away? Gyro grabbed his steel ball and struck it straight into his own chest. His body twisted like a towel, forcing the moisture out and draining him dry, reducing the weight on his horse again. Severe dehydration could kill a man. This time, Gyro truly bet his life on it. His horse also responded fiercely, picking up speed once more. At 80 meters from the finish line, Gyro finally overtook Diego. He finally moved into first place. Seeing this, Diego resorted to a dirty trick. He spat the pebbles he'd swallowed the night before down at his horse's hooves. The horse kicked them forward, and a stone hit Gyro's horse, ripping its hide. With only 30 meters to go, Gyro tightened his reins and forced himself through. But to everyone's shock, the first one to cross the line was actually Johnny. While Gyro and Diego were fighting for the lead, Johnny quietly accelerated and overtook Diego. And no one noticed Diego spitting stones. The committee thought the stone was kicked up by accident, so they didn't penalize him. By now, the dehydrated Gyro was extremely weak. And just as Johnny had said, he lost to Diego once again. If he wanted to win, he had to become hungrier and stop holding back. As for the Saint's corpse, Gyro decided to take the matter seriously. He wanted to grow from this and become stronger. After waiting for a long time, the results for the third stage were finally announced. Johnny had taken second place. Second? How could it be second? 1 hour earlier, a racer named Hot Pants had already reached the finish line.